Um, the new high school location has been a hot topic for obvious reasons, and I think it's certainly one worthy of discussion. I've lived in Boone County my entire life, and we've had 2 high schools, and now we're going to have a third, and where it goes, obviously, is going to make a big difference for a wide variety of reasons. Ben Londeree is the co-chair of the Smart Growth Coalition. He's a concerned citizen. He's on the high school selection committee. He brought with him a whole bunch of data and maps of things that I think imagine to be a lot more depth of what his conversation may be about. But I think it's an important issue for us all to consider, because certainly once you build it, you cannot unbuild it. So I would like you to please welcome him, and again, be kind, because he's on short notice.
Well, it's nice to see you all. Enjoyed the dinner. A little less than an hour and a half ago, I got a call. Fortunately, I wasn't doing what I've been doing. I've been trimming trees and cutting down trees and all that kind of stuff, and there would have been no way that I would have gotten here on time. But today it rained, and I decided I would do some work inside, and so fortunately I was available. Maybe not so fortunate. I'm the co-chair of the Smart Growth Coalition, and we have a number of goals, principles, and so forth. One of them is to avoid what we call as jumping out away from the community to create new development. We think that growth should occur from the inside to the outside. The leapfrog type is something that we will continue to argue against, and so that's where we come in when it comes to the school site selection. Now, you've been provided with some data, and Kevin Hall indicated that I brought it. I didn't. Nancy Harder brought that, and she's a tireless worker, and she owes me one because she called me about an hour and a half ago. Why should you be interested in the school site selection? Well, there are a lot of things to consider, but our organization, first of all, considers, is it going to cause a lot of increase in our taxes? And is it going to be leapfrog development and so forth? Well, if a remote site is selected, it's going to cause some real problems from the infrastructure point of view. An arterial road in 2005, the city was getting bids for about $500 per linear foot. We're talking roads like New Haven, Range Line, and WW. We're talking about sewers that are, I don't have recent figures on that, but I'm guessing it's around $100 a foot, a linear foot. So it's not as expensive as roads, but it's still very expensive. And typically, sewer lines determine where growth is going to occur. And the city doesn't extend sewer lines unless they see development pressure or a lot of need for it. But anyway, if you just add these two together, I suspect that we're talking $20 to $30 million. Now, where's that going to come from? It's going to come from us. The city, the county, neither one have the money to do this. The county's budget for roads is $3.5 million a year, and there happen to be a lot of other roads that need attention. The city has more money, of course, but they've already mapped out the roads they're going to build over the next several years. So the only way they're going to come up with any more money is to come to you and ask for more taxes. Related to the cost, some of the costs will be ongoing. If this site is several miles from town, we're talking of something in the neighborhood of $1 million a year for busing. That will go on year after year. Well, where is growth currently occurring? Well, you have a map in front of you that Nancy brought. If you look at the little black dots on it, you'll see that most of the elementary, middle, and junior high schools are located either north of I-70 or west of Providence. Only a small feeder schools exist in the southeastern segment of the city. This led Doug Hunt in a recent editorial to suggest that maybe a new high school should be built west. But most of the people that you read about in the newspapers, editorial letters to the editor and so forth, are campaigning for a high school located north of I-70, where a large amount of the growth has occurred. Now, the selection committee was selected kind of in response to some of the early concerns that were raised by citizens. In fact, we had a forum scheduled with Dr. Chase, Ken Pearson, presiding commissioner, Carl Scala from the council, and we were going to have a forum on a discussion of where the site should be, what should be some of the concerns and so forth. Dr. Chase decided to have this committee and asked that the forum be postponed. And after consultation with others, we decided to do that. The committee, the high school selection site committee, consists of, I believe it's 21 individuals. They will receive packets on the sites that have been forthcoming on the 10th. And on the 18th, we will meet for 2 hours and make a recommendation. The recommendation would be based on individual rankings. I suspect we're going to add them together. For you statisticians, you can't add ranks very well because it could be 2 of them are very close. The third one's way down here. I don't know how many sites we are going to have to select from, but Dr. Chase asked for sites publicly, and my guess, now this is truly just a guess, I know it's more than 2, and I suspect it's more in the neighborhood of at least 4, maybe 5 or 6, but I don't really know. Well, one thing that concerns me, of course, is that short deliberation time that we have. We will not have the benefit of knowing what the concerns of other people are until the last minute. And with 21 people, I don't suppose anybody's going to have more than just a couple, 3 minutes to say something. And then we're going to have to make a selection. Then if you look at the committee members, you find, at least on the surface, it appears that several of them may have conflicts of interest. By that I mean, there's a potential for them to benefit financially if a certain site is selected. And that should concern anybody who believes in an open democratic process. Well, I've given you the kind of a cursory explanation of what's going to happen, and I'd like to open it up for any questions, and if I can't answer them, maybe somebody else can. Yes, sir.
2 questions. One, what is the law, as it's stated, that speaks to who would be on the committee? That's number 1. Number two, the fact you're gonna act on the 18th, sounds to me like a very hurried process. Is there any way that citizens can have an outcry against that procedure?
The question, first, I'm supposed to restate the question so you can have it on television. The first question had to do, are there any state laws about who could be on the committee? And to my knowledge, there are no state laws. This is a board prerogative. I think that Dr. Chase has made the selection. She probably, but I don't know, has conferred with some board members for this list, but I don't know the answer to that. The second question is, how can you become involved in the process? Well, some people have already been involved in writing letters to the editor. Personally, I have visited with Dr. Chase, and I know other people who have. You all have board members you can contact. You can write letters to the editor. You can talk to your friends. Related to that, now my circle of friends is not great. My wife has a larger circle of friends because she is more involved socially than I am. But personally, I have only heard people who are associated with the schools and school board and Donnie Stamplin, a developer. Those are the only ones that I personally have heard who are in favor of the first site that was selected, the Beamer site. My wife has, as I said, a much larger circle of friends. She hasn't heard anybody either. I don't know how you are. How many of you have an opinion on the site? About a third of you. Okay. Have I answered your question,
Not
sir?
quite. It wasn't so much how do you get involved. The question was, when you folks make a decision on the 18th, is that locked in concrete? Is that a foregone conclusion that that's where the site will be? Because what bothers me, it sounds like it's a hurried process, and maybe we should go back and look at that process. So it's not so much how to just get involved, but is there any, that's part of it, but is there any way to stop the railroad, the train?
Number one, the question was, what can citizens do? Paraphrasing it. And it is a short process, but it is not final. It's advisory. The Board of Education will, as it now plans, will vote on the site on the 20th, early morning. And I'm certain that they will take into consideration what this committee will suggest. Related to the committee, there is concern that City Council wasn't represented at all, whereas commissioners are. However, I'm not sure just how much legal standing that the city has on this issue because it is not in the city. But, of course, it will be at some time. But I'm not a lawyer, but maybe a lawyer person in here can make a statement. But it seems to me to have a case, you have to be personally involved somehow. I saw a hand up. I think you were next.
I can barely read this committee, but I perused it 2 or 3 times. And I count 3 women on there, one a former, maybe Lynn is still on the school board or something, and 1 parent, and I don't know, 2 parents.
2 parents.
And one of them is a male. But I am very annoyed that there aren't more women on this, since women are the ones that take the kids to school and are usually a little more involved than the men are. So I think this is really slanted towards some power brokers in town here.
The question was, she was concerned about the number of women on the committee. And I have one that I received from Dr. Chase, which is a little easier to read.
Oh, okay.
And I think I see 3.
Yeah, that's what I counted. 1 is a parent.
think Jerry had a question.
One male.
Just two quick things. The city has no legal standing on this. And it has, but then no one on this committee has legal standing on it. I think that the concern of representation from the city council is that regardless of where it's located, there will be involvement of the city in terms of infrastructure. And if there are infrastructure costs, and they've got a short time frame on the construction of this school, and we're caught in the bind to where if we are to provide infrastructure support for the school, we're going to have projects on our 5-year plan, on our 5-year CIP plan, that we're going to have to take off of them. And we're the ones that will pay the political responsibility for telling people that very important infrastructure projects are having to be delayed. And so the city council feels that it needs to at least ways have a visibility. So that's...
I'll try to paraphrase what Jerry Wade said, who was the fourth ward council representative. He agreed with the comment that I made that the city has no legal standing in the matter, but he said that the city will undoubtedly become involved because of infrastructure concerns as this progresses. Yes, ma'am.
I brought this up to school board before, is when they plan their buildings, it seems to me that they need to plan 2-story buildings. That way, you don't have as much roof cost, you don't need to purchase as much land to build a building. And you can take care of the handicapped students with elevators, and it would do our kids a lot of good to climb the stairs. So, I think if you're gonna be a part of this meeting, when you consider where you can build because you need so much land, that's something to take into consideration.
I suspect that the need for land is for not playgrounds, but fields for physical education and for athletics. That's where an awful lot of the land will be needed. And obviously, if the question has to do with, or state really, that she would rather see us build up, and it'd be good for exercise, and it would save the school a lot of money, and probably reduce the amount of costs for building a roof and then maintaining it, which in any flat building requires quite a bit of maintenance for a roof. Did I restate your comments adequately? There was a question over here.
I just want to follow up on what Bill Wickersham said. I've been out of town, so I guess I missed it, but why are we in such a rush? Is there some kind of legal cutoff date or something?
The question was, why are we in such a rush? Is there a legal cutoff? The rush is based on the decision of the school board when they would like to open the facility, and it requires then a certain timetable, which apparently is pretty soon. They have to get started if it's to open in 2010, I believe it is. So that's, I think, the driving force is, when do you have to start it to get it ready for 2010? Nancy?
I think it would be very helpful to the public to have guidelines and laws that are published around school boards making and school superintendents making this choice. Because I read in one blog that the site that was chosen doesn't have enough acreage per child and per number of students. And then somebody said they talked to the superintendent about that, and she said, well, that's just a guideline. It's not a rule. So it would be really helpful if somehow, somewhere in the city, we could get that information in the public, in the newspapers probably.
The question was, how large does the site have to be, in essence? And there are national guidelines, and I'm reluctant to state them exactly because I have to do it from memory, but I'm thinking like 30 acres plus an acre for every 10 students or something like that. And crediting agencies would consider that. Is there somebody here who knows that,
It's written over here.
what's written over there?
But I think it'd be nice to know all guidelines and rules that pertain to this process, not just this one.
Well, I don't think that there are very many rules. A lot of people have been clamoring to make it as open as possible. The school board has the legal right to close sessions that involve negotiating for a site or anything like that. And except that in this particular situation, I think I see us, we are going to have proposals in front of us. It's a matter of making an educated choice between those that are available. The facts will be written, and all we have to do is decide. And so it won't be a matter of negotiating with this one versus this one and so forth. Yes, sir.
Are there any models or precedents for this that you could go by, like in another county or another part of the state or national or whatever?
The question was, are there any examples or models for selecting a school? I'm sure there are. I'm not privy to them. I do remember that when Rockbridge was built, Rockbridge High School, there was a lot of clamor that it was really way out of nowhere, except there was a subdivision right next to it, as I recall. We used to run out that way, and it's really changed now. Here's a note, what I just told you, 30 acres plus an acre per 10 students is apparently right according to this document right here. Okay, Kavanaugh.
I guess my question kind of is it sounds like you guys are an advisory committee that is going to get a pick from 6 choices that you're not going to have any negotiating power over whatsoever. Are you even going to know what the costs of each of those different choices are?
My understanding is that engineering surveys, whatever, that organization is going to do a site analysis on all of these sites that are presented. And they're going to use about, I think we counted up 27 criteria. And each school will have some kind of a notation on it as far as each of those 27 criteria. So it behooves those of us on the committee to do their homework, because we're going to get it about 7 days ahead of time. And I can tell you that I'm going to study hard, and I hope the rest of the committee members do too.
Does that include extra costs as far as what you're talking about, as far as infrastructure costs for each site and getting students to and from?
Infrastructure costs are there. I think it is listed under the category of costs. I doubt whether there will be much comment about the ongoing costs based on if you're going to have a lot of busing versus little busing, that's a cost that's going to go on year after year after year. Yes, ma'am.
Since I'm a professional statistician, I have to try to explain a way that can make statisticians look better in the way they treat data. And one is that you usually don't want to have to rank the number of sites. That's a terrible way to try to give numbers in an evaluation. A much sounder way is to rate instead of rank. So if you take each site and ask people to rate them from very desirable to very undesirable on a 7-point scale, okay? So 0 in the middle is neutral. And if people that are going to have to read all these proposals know that rule ahead of time, then they can even be thinking about how would I rate each site from very desirable to very desirable. And I would even think the people distributing this information could go so far as to say, what are the features that would make a site very desirable, and what would be features that would make a site very undesirable? Thank you.
That was an explanation of the problems with trying to do mathematical operations with ordinal data, which ranking would be. You need what we call equal unit scale, where the difference between 1 and 2 is the same as 2 and 3, and 3 and 4, and so forth. Her idea was to do it by rating each school site. And a rating has a somewhat assumed equal unit scale. It's not really hard and fast, but it's better than ranking you. Yes? David?
I have a comment and a question. The comment is, it seems like we have a major disconnect in our governmental system here between, in this case, the lack of communication between the school board and the city of Columbia. And somebody talked, I think Nancy maybe spoke earlier about laws, and I don't know if they can be addressed that way, but somehow we need to recognize this system is broken down in this case. It seems like. You talk about the city having a 5-year capital plan, and apparently the city had no input or no significant input or information in advance to include anything about a high school site in their plans. Something's messed up here, and I don't know the answer, but I think we've got to recognize that and look at that in the future too. The question is, if the site is chosen outside of the city limits of Columbia, does the city of Columbia still have all or most of the infrastructure responsibility for roads and sewers? Or does that fall on the county, even if they can't pay? What happens in the case of a site? I mean, that's all of us too, but what happens in the case of a site that's outside of the city of Columbia in terms of capital infrastructure responsibility?
There are two factors involved here. One has to do with apparent lack of cooperation between governing bodies that have overlapping jurisdictions. And the second one was, how would the city be involved if it were just outside the city limits? Well, the city, let me answer the second one first. The city has a policy that anybody who wants to be annexed can be annexed. That's oversimplifying it, but essentially that's what it is. And if they are not contiguous, meaning the state law would prevent current annexation, the policy is they would sign a statement of agreement that they would become part of the city if they become contiguous. And there are a number of those kinds. And developers do this a lot because they love to get those free sewers.